As the Chicago Bulls roster now sits at a full 15 with maybe moves still left to come, we're going to take a look at where the Chicago Bulls roster not only ranks in the Eastern Conference, but overall in the league, and have the Bulls done enough to maintain their 2025 pick? We're going to talk a little bit about that. First, we're going to talk about the Miami Heat potentially being in on Zach LaVine. This is per a report, and dive a little bit into the mailbag. All that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into it for today. So, there's a question on, are the Bulls done? And we know that the Bulls have looked to move Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic, and maybe they aren't as successful in that, but we'll see what the remaining of the offseason has. But I want to take a look right now at where the Bulls are with where the roster currently sits. Now, we know that the Chicago Bulls roster is full at 15 players. They made some changes to bring in new players, new dynamics, things like that. And specifically, I want to focus on the 1, 2, and 3, the point guard, shooting guard, and small forward positions. I want to focus on that mainly because there's some question on how the balance of this roster is going to work out. And so when you look at it, there is 144 minutes that you could spread out between those three positions. 144 minutes. That's it. And so that includes the bench, that includes everything. So if you're looking at the positions between 1 through 3, those players that are going to play at those positions are either Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Zach LaVine, Ayo Dosunmu, Matas Buzelis, Dalen Terry, and maybe Lonzo Ball if he does. If all those players play, which they're not all going to play the same minutes, that's only 20 minutes that could be allocated to each one of those guys, right? And that's not even to say if P. Will or Torrey Craig only play exclusively at the 4. That means no 3 minutes for them at all. You have 20 minutes to spread through those 6, 7 players. And so because of that, that means that somebody's going to be left as the odd man out. It also means that we're going to be playing weird rotations. Right now, with how the Bulls roster is shaped up, you're looking at Zach LaVine starting at the 3, more than likely, and Kobe White and Josh Giddey at the 1 and the 2. Now, if the Bulls do look at Josh Giddey and say that maybe they can bring Josh Giddey off the bench until they can facilitate a Zach LaVine trade, then we're looking at starting Zach and Kobe and Zach at the 1 and the 2. But overall, it's the balance right now on the Bulls roster does not make, let me not say it doesn't make sense, but it does shape up that the Bulls could be playing a very small roster, which we've done already, but not at those positions. But so that's what the Bulls are looking at. And they're going to have to figure it out. 48 minutes per possession. That's all you have for a full game. Like I said, you're looking at spreading that out across three positions. That leaves you 144 minutes to between those with like I said, 6 to 7 players playing that. And so that right there means that the Bulls rotations are going to be weird. At least to start the season, if Zach LaVine is on this roster to start the season, the Bulls rotations are going to be a bit weird. You're looking at a starting lineup for the Chicago Bulls, potentially of Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Zach LaVine, Patrick Williams, and Nikola Vucevic. And that's what Matas Buzelis, their rookie, they're going to want to get him minutes. Ayo Dosunmu, who's shown and deserved, they're going to get him minutes. Jalen Smith, they're going to get him minutes. Torrey Craig, he didn't play a whole hell of a lot of minutes, but you do shape up that he's going to get some minutes. And that's if you want to work in Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips, right? Like, these are young players. The whole point of, or the thought process behind the Bulls going younger is to get these guys more minutes. And so it's going to be interesting roster and balance to shake up. But then you have to ask yourself, the question is, where do the Bulls rank in the East, in the league overall? And I broke this down. Teams that I think are absolutely worse than the Chicago Bulls. There's teams that I have in both conferences. In the East, Brooklyn, the Wizards, Pistons, and Raptors are teams that I have that are going to be flat out worse than the Chicago Bulls. In the West, the Blazers, Jazz, and Spurs, maybe with the Spurs, and I can even say I can throw a maybe in there with the Jazz, right? Only because we don't know what the Jazz are doing. The Jazz reportedly, in some cases, they want to ship off. They want to ship off Lauri Markkanen. Some that they don't. We don't know what the Jazz are doing. But keep in mind, the Houston Rockets last season had 41 wins. They were a 500 team, and they did not even make the play-in. 41 wins would have put them as the 9th seed in the Eastern Conference. So while the West, there are teams that are going to be worse than the Bulls, even the worst team in the Western Conference, the Portland Trailblazers, had 21 wins. That's 7 more wins than the worst team in the Eastern Conference of the Detroit Pistons with 14. So I'm looking at that. Then you look at teams that I think are right at the same level of the Chicago Bulls in the East, because I think every other team in the West is better than the Bulls. Even the Warriors, one of the teams that you look at, they scraped in to even make the playoffs. They had way more, or to make the play-in, they had way more wins than what the Chicago Bulls did. So personally, I'm still giving the Warriors, even in that case, much better than the Chicago Bulls. So the teams in the East, I only see teams in the East being worse than being at the same level as the Bulls. That's the Hornets, if they're healthy, right? I think if the Hornets are fully healthy and can stay healthy, they can be better than the Chicago Bulls. They have a lot of talent on that team. And the Hawks, right? So that's teams that are kind of competing probably for that 9th, 10th seed right along with the Chicago Bulls. And the teams that are better than the Bulls, the Celtics, Knicks, Bucks, 76ers, Cavs, Magic, Pacers, and Heat. All better than the Chicago Bulls. Now the Heat, they could be a maybe there, but I think the Heat are going to make a move, which we'll talk about there a little bit later. I think the Heat are going to try to definitely stay competitive in this as well. But those are the only teams that I have. Those are the teams that I have being better than the Bulls. That's majority of the Eastern Conference. And like I said, with the West, even if you look at the 10th seed in the Western Conference, that was a 46-win Golden State Warriors team. The 10th seed in the Western Conference would have damn near been the 8th seed in the East, and probably better if they played in the East. So the Bulls have gotten worse. And I don't think I maintain that. I know some people doubt that. The Bulls have gotten worse. And we've seen a story before where Zach LaVine is theoretically your best player. And yes, Kobe has made an absolute step up. Make no mistake about it. But then you're playing at a position of your defense has gotten worse. You lost Alex Caruso, who was an elite defender. You lost Andre Drummond, who was a really good defender for you as well. Yes, you got Ayo Dosunmu, who still is a very versatile defender. Hasn't shown an ability to be as switchable as what Alex Caruso has been. You brought in Jalen Smith. Like Jalen Smith a lot, but he's not a great on-ball defender by any stretch of the imagination. Really good weak side defender with bringing some blocks, some rim protection, things like that. And he's a solid rebounder. He gets really good production for the minutes that he plays, and we'll see if he plays more minutes for the Chicago Bulls. But then you have young players that you aren't sure on. We don't know what Matas Bucelis can be yet at the NBA level. He's going to have to fix that frame. Defense, three-point shooting, those are the biggest kind of question marks around him right now. We don't know what that's going to be. And so the Bulls have, on paper, gotten younger. They're going to play a much more exciting style, but how much success they're going to have in that is questionable. If the goal for the Chicago Bulls is keeping that 2025 pick, they haven't done nearly enough to make it a clear cut that they're gonna be able to keep that. Now, I do think that they are, but there are some reasons that I got to give credit for the people that think, hey, this Bulls team maybe still can compete for a 10th or a 9th seed. And I get the Eastern Conference is looked at as weaker, but you got to think also in that Eastern Conference, you got teams that are going to be better. The Philadelphia 76ers are going to be better than what they were last year if Joel Embiid can stay healthy as well. But I look at the top 8 teams in the 8 teams in the Eastern Conference are pretty much probably going to stay the top 8 teams in the Eastern Conference. And the teams competing for the 9th and 10th seed, and the Chicago Bulls and Atlanta Hawks that did that last year, is going to probably be those same teams with the Charlotte Hornets if they can stay healthy for an entire season, which that brings about its own questions there. And so, like I said, the Bulls, if their goal is keeping that 2025 pick, the top 10 protected pick, they have not done nearly enough to make that a clear-cut case that they can keep it. I believe that they will in this Eastern Conference. I just don't think that they are going to have enough shooting, that they're going to have enough defense. A team that was already 24th in the league in defense last season, I just think has gotten worse defensively. Now, that's not to say that a full season of Patrick Williams, Julian Phillips may be making a leap, Dalen Terry playing more minutes. We'll see with Josh Giddey and how he improves this game. But overall, I don't think the Bulls have done enough for me to feel confident that they're gonna be this team that's not gonna bottom out to the bottom 10. But like I said, they haven't done enough to make that clear. And moving on from either Zach LaVine or Nikola Vucevic would make that more clear if that's the case, depending on what they get back, of course. Now, there's not a whole lot of suitors out there reportedly for Zach LaVine or Nikola Vucevic. This may have to wait till you get closer to the season to really see how that market develops. But there is one. This comes from David Rooney, from Clutch Points, who wrote an article on the Miami Heat could make a play for Zach LaVine. And his reasoning being that the Miami Heat are looking to still retool and still contend, especially with the deal that they gave Bam Adebayo. They're moving him to the 4 theoretically with Khalil Ware, who I know hasn't looked amazing yet in Summer League. It doesn't really matter there. And he presents a deal that is the Bulls getting Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, and a 2026 second-round pick that's coming from the Los Angeles Lakers, and that the Bulls would have to send Zach LaVine a 2029 first-round pick and a 2028 second-round pick in this. Now, this is one of the, I think, more realistic deals because it is taking into consideration what we've heard is that the Bulls have tried to attach first-round picks to move off of Zach LaVine. And so I think that he's taking that into consideration. I always like the articles and the trade speculation that takes everything into consideration. It doesn't just look at it from one side to another or tries to make contracts work. And the question is that what would the Bulls do this deal and would the Miami Heat do this deal? Now, we know that there have been questions on will Zach LaVine fit into Heat culture? I always give Heat culture the benefit of the doubt. You have Eric Spoelstra, you have Pat Riley there, you still have a Jimmy Butler there, a Bam Adebayo. These are players that have been under that Heat culture that aren't going to allow a player to come in and not really adapt to that Heat culture. He's going to be held to a standard. The question is why would this, other than the Miami Heat looking to retool to still make a run, to still maybe get out a team that could make a deep run in the Eastern Conference, is Zach LaVine and a future first-round pick enough to do that, or would they just keep Tyler Hero, a player that still does stretch the floor, has shown an ability to be a big-time scorer as well, and then you're losing your three-point shooting in Duncan Robinson. Now, this makes the Bulls even more guard-heavy, and I think you also got to keep in mind that the Bulls can't take back 2 players back for Zach LaVine because we have a full 15-man roster. So because of that, the Bulls would have to include another player to make this deal work, or they would have to waive Ernulap Batum to create that extra roster spot. The money works out, but the roster spot is the thing that you have to ask your question on in that. And that's a question that a lot of teams are going to be asking themselves when it comes to Zach LaVine. I think at this point that the Bulls are probably not going to find a trade partner for LaVine until the trade deadline. That's just my thought process. That's how this thing is developed. Could it change as teams get towards the end of free agency and really evaluate that? It could even go to where they get to the opening of training camp and they realize this just ain't enough. Let's go ahead and make a move. Let's pull the trigger. Maybe. But the Bulls, if they do move Zach LaVine, giving up a 2029 first-round pick, maybe what the Bulls have to do. Now, that pick is far enough out that if the Bulls do hit on the 2025 draft pick, if they hit on the 2026, the pick to the San Antonio Spurs keeps getting deferred. I think it's top 8 protected in 2026 and 2028 or 7, somewhere in there, if we don't give it up in 2025. So the Bulls will be losing a first-round pick unless they're just that bad. If they're in the bottom 8 for the next 3 years, then you better damn well hit on 2 out of those 3 first-round picks. If not, because then I think it turns into 2 second-round picks. So that's what you got to look at it with. But ultimately, the Bulls are still in a place where it's a hard spot that the Bulls are in. And while I look at the league and I look at the Eastern Conference and I think that this is a team that's going to have a hard time competing, I do think the Bulls are going to play a much more fun brand of basketball, a much more modern-style brand of basketball, without elite three-point shooting, though. And we've seen this team with Zach LaVine on it has not been a great three-point shooting team before. He can hit the 3, but you need more than that. Zach LaVine doesn't take the volume amount of threes for him single-handedly to turn the Chicago Bulls team into a knockdown 3. We've seen it. Zach LaVine and Patrick Williams have been on this team for years, and guess what? The Bulls have still been a bad three-point shooting team overall. So you can't look at those guys that because they're coming back and being more healthy that all of a sudden it's going to make us this better three-point shooting team. They've been here, and we were bad three-point shooting teams even with them here. So, yes, Iowa's taking a step three-point shooting-wise, and, maybe it's not going to be as bad as maybe even what I'm thinking, but it's definitely not going to be great either. And so that is the ultimate question, is that the Bulls in going this pseudo-rebuild, and again, the only reason I'm not calling it a full rebuild is I won't call it that until 2 out of the core 3 are gone. We got 1. We need another one before I'm willing to call it a full rebuild. But because of that, right, and because of you going through the pseudo-rebuild, right now the Bulls still sit in just as much questions. Yes, you're a younger roster. You're going to be playing more athletically. You're going to be playing faster. You've made those things clear, but you still not have cleared yourself enough on one single path to where it makes the future a lot more clear for the Bulls as a whole either, at least not in my opinion. I know a lot of people share different opinions on that. I would love to hear your guys' thought process on that as well. But overall, I just think that the Bulls They need to make another move. And that move, I'm not saying they need to make it now, but between now and the trade deadline, another move has to come to clearly set us down that path of going younger and being bad for a little while and taking advantage of our first round picks. And we'll see what happens with that. But with that said, we got a couple of voicemails I want to get into as well. One of my favorite callers in Troy called in. Let's go ahead and play that now.
How you going, Haize? It's Troy from the Whole Lot of Bull podcast. Hey, mate, now that the DeMar DeRozan deal is finally done, just want to give some quick thoughts on the deal. Obviously, as we all know, that we got Chris Duarte, 2 second-round picks and some cash in the deal to DeMar to go to Sacramento. I think this is it's a good trade. Like, the other day, as we all know, we didn't have to help DeMar get to his preferred destination. That ended up also being the Kings. We didn't have to be involved in this at all. So the fact that we did get involved and we got some assets back in this deal, I like it. These are assets in like Duarte and the 2 second-round picks that we could potentially use in another trade to move on from Zach LaVien and or Nikola Vucevic. So this is a good deal. I like it. You know, a lot of people can say, "Oh, why didn't we get a first-round pick?" And like, we didn't have that much leverage. Like, let's just be clear here. We didn't have that much leverage in a deal, inside a trade deal with DeRozan. Yeah, with that being said, now I just want to say, I know DeMar's obviously not going to listen to this, but hey, we can all hope. DeMar, thank you. You are an all-time great Chicago Bull. What you brought to the Bulls and to the city of Chicago. And, mate, you are a Bull for life. Chicago, thank you. We love you. All the best to Sacramento. Man, it's been real, DeMar. Thank you. Haize, let's see what happens next, buddy. All right, man. Take it easy. See you at Good Bulls.
Listen, I agree that the DeMar DeRozan deal is a good deal, not calling it a great deal, for where the Bulls are right now. I think a lot of people are looking at this deal through the lens of what they could have gotten if they traded him at the trade deadline last year, and I understand that. But I don't judge it that way. The woulda, coulda, shoulda would have left you in a constant spiral. Yes, they would have gotten more back had they moved him at the trade deadline, but they didn't. And so with the situation, the reality that the Bulls found themselves in DeMar DeRozan being an unrestricted free agent, they took advantage of that the best way that they could. They got 2 second-round picks out of it and a contract. I don't think Chris Duarte is going to factor into the Bulls' long-term plans of being 27 and him not being healthy over the last few years, but weirder things have happened. And so because of that, I do look at this and say that the Bulls did the best with what they could at that moment. And but that doesn't take away from the fact that the Bulls need to show more foresight. And that is where their inability to strike on players where their value is high is ultimately going to be the undoing of this team, or make the rebuild harder now that you put yourself in because you didn't recognize this earlier. And I'm not saying, like some people said, well, as soon as Lonzo Ball went down, we should have traded Zach and trade. Nobody's going to do that after they rehaul a team less than 12 months later. So, but as you went through this and started realizing this, and I know that next year you really was hoping that Lonzo Ball was going to come back, and then Kobe had his progression and they felt confident about that. But, you know, it just constantly is where this team just keeps lacking the foresight. But overall, I like the DeMar deal for what it's worth. I think that they got in. To your point, I'm always going to give credit and think of DeMar DeRozan's time here for his production. Finally, the team didn't accomplish much, but that isn't all on him. But what he was able to do, breaking what records, all those things, it's always going to be looked at positively for me. All right, but let's move into the next one. This last voicemail that we have today, this one's from Corn.
Hey, what's the word, King? It's Corn. Let's get right into it. So, you know, it's no secret I live out here in Vegas, right? So, of course, I'm pissed to go watch the Summer League, right? So, Summer League. Okay. I can't wait to see Miles Bazilis, Julian, of course, Adama Sanogu. I can't, you know, it's going to be interesting, you know. Hopefully they start implementing the playing style that we're going to be playing during the regular season starting now. You know, I wish they would do that. And this is, and I want everybody to understand this. This whole season, I want everybody to understand this is a evaluation season. Wins and losses, I'm just going to be real with you. I know you're not doing that episode yet, so I'm not going to bring up how many wins or losses they're going to do yet. I'm going to wait for you to ask that. Well, you kind of did, but, I'll wait for you to go in more depth to that, for me to actually say that. I will be going to the games. I'm going to the one on the 13th for sure. And I'm going to the one on Sunday at 9 p.m. And I bet people like, why the game so late at 9 p.m.? I'm going to tell you something. It's going to be 118 degrees Sunday. It was 118 degrees today in Las Vegas. July is the hottest year in Vegas. So right now people can't even fly in because the tar will melt the tires on the plane. So we had to cancel flights just because the asphalt is too hot for planes to land on. That's what we're dealing with. So that's why we're going to the game at 9 p.m. Ain't nobody leaving out in the afternoon in Las Vegas. And if you is, you're crazy. And I got one more thing. What do you think about Orlon Bitim not being on the Summer League team? I kind of wish he could have been so I can see him play because, we got a little bit of sample size of him. Maybe he can't. But what do you take on that, Orlon Bitim? Because I wish he could have been playing. I wish he would have been out there in the Summer League and got some tick in. So what's your thoughts on that? Maybe I'm wrong about it. Maybe I'm not seeing something about it. But I wish Orlon would have been out there as well. All right, King. I always appreciate you. Love you. Blessings. See you right next.
All right, as far as Summer League, I don't know how much of the Bulls play style we're going to see because the play style comes down to personnel, the specific skill set of those players. We don't have that similar skill set in Summer League, and then we don't have also the caliber of talent. So I wouldn't look to take too much off of play style from what we see in Summer League. Preseason is kind of more where you'll see that. The Summer League is kind of just fun. Evaluate your rookies. But best believe that if, Midas Busilis twists the ankle, they're not playing him the rest of Summer League. It's just not going to happen. So, but we'll see. This is a Summer League team that has Julian Phillips. It has Midas Busilis on it. It has Henry Drell and Domask on it. And, those type of players. And it could be a fun one. And we'll see what it ends up bringing. But I definitely will be watching the Summer League games. We'll be live here after the games. We'll be breaking them down and what we do see from the players that are going to either be on the G League team or the actual team. And that's just what we do here at Chicago Bulls Central, man. But thank you for leaving that voicemail, Corn. And thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully this season for the Chicago Bulls bring even more clarity than what we have so far. I love you guys. Go Bulls. See Red. You already know what it is, man. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullsCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. That's thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See Red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.